You know, reading your book Out of Bounds really hit home. As someone who's worked closely with coaches and youth athletes, your story felt incredibly personal.
Yeah, I'd hoped it would resonate like that. I do believe it's an issue that's certainly wider than just myself, and I had recognized it in several of the events that I'd been in, other coaches, but also starting to see it more and more in the media. So I'm glad it resonated, and I hope it continues to do so.
Before we get into it, I have to ask, did you always know this story needed to be a book, or was there a specific moments that made you say, I have to put this out there?
Yeah, I didn't always know. About 20 or 21 years into my coaching career is when I started to recognize that there was this increasing pattern of parental interference with the player-coach relationship. And in that recognition that it was more angry, more visceral, more selfish in a lot of ways, a loss of sense of team. And that's when I started to kind of take notice and just kind of went backwards from that point into my career and made some outlines. And then eventually it shaped into a book. So it was about a 10-year journey altogether, but at that point I knew it needed to be told.
The following is a conversation with Darren Ault, a longtime high school basketball coach, youth mentor, and author of Out of Bounds, a book that pulls back the curtain on a toxic intersection of parental interference and institutional failure in youth sports. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Ben Salah. Today, we'll unpack the darker side of parental ambition in youth sports and the cost when truth takes a backseat. Check the episode description to support our show and keep this conversation going. Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sid. Appreciate being on it and having the opportunity to discuss this with you.
What led you to write Out of Bounds?
So again, around 21 years into my coaching career, I started to have some more negative interactions with parents than I had seen before in the previous 21 years. And I noticed that they were increasing in intensity and frequency. And it wasn't a lot of people, but the ones that it did involve just seemed to have this real intense frustration or anger or a lot of emotion around, their child and their child's involvement in basketball for me. But I also noticed more in the media and the news stories that there was a lot more intense interactions that were making the screen. People jumping out onto the field or the ice to interact with a referee or a coach or pulling their kids off the bench. And in my head, I was like, what is going on? What is it that is driving these kind of behaviors from parents? And again, mostly a handful of parents in each circumstance, but driving this kind of behavior and in essence increasing the level of toxicity in sports and ruining things for their child and for the children that are on that same team.
And after 30 years of coaching, Darren, what was the breaking point?
In year, let's see, 33, 29. So I started being the head coach of a program at Homedale High School here in New Jersey. And I was in my fourth year of that program. So that was my last year of coaching. We were in the process of building a program, had actually gotten ourselves to the point where we were starting to gain a lot of local recognition, state recognition, competing for, top 20 in the state of New Jersey, those kind of things. And this was the year that my team was ready to go. 9 games into that year, I got a phone call one morning after a very competitive game against a significant or prominent state team, where we lost by 9. We had played a really great game, but ended up being on the losing end of that. But I got a call the next morning from a principal at high school telling me that I had been suspended indefinitely.
Wow.
And really, that was all that I could pull from that call initially. I had no idea what was going on, but as I worked my way through that whole event, it just became evident to me that, I needed to be more guarded about myself, which was not the way I normally thought. The way I thought about was, how do we develop this program? How do we build this team? How do I, focus on the girls and their growth and development?
What emotions comes up when no one stood up for you, Darren?
Well, the people who there were a lot of people who did stand up for me.
Hmm.
I'd want to be clear on that. There was certainly the basketball community. So I'll back up a second. What had actually happened was I was accused of inappropriate touching by a freshman girl. Not that I inappropriately touched her, but used two other girls, a senior and a sophomore, as the quote unquote victims, even though those parents of the senior and sophomore had absolutely refuted it and stood up on my behalf to the administration. The accusation was allowed to go through. So it was frustrated parents using their daughter, their 14-year-old daughter, as a shield so that they could throw this false allegation out there into the ether of the sports world, and then using two other girls, not their own, as a weapon to get at me. So to answer your question, Sid, the frustration of lack of support came from the administration of the school and the school board themselves, the people who were in leadership and who are responsible and accountable to mitigating circumstances like this to come out to a fair and complete resolution, failed to act. And it's that simple, failed to act. So
Hmm.
for 40 days, I was sidelined and ultimately lost the opportunity to complete that season, and made the choice at that point that as much as I love basketball and passionate for teaching and coaching youth and helping them realize the potential in themselves, it was no longer risk free in the sense of I don't work in a school. I work out in the corporate world, and I certainly couldn't have somebody's penchant for selfishness impact my ability to make a living.
Yeah, yeah. Was there a moment when you realized this wasn't just a bad season, but part of a much bigger systemic problem?
Oh yeah. Initially it was all a very selfish, driven act. This young lady just wanted to be on varsity. She wasn't quite ready yet. She had some nice skill sets, but they weren't developed. The foot speed, the intensity for defense, the things that I needed at the varsity level weren't there yet. So it started off as that, just a selfish act, right? Which in a room full of adults having an adult conversation could have been resolved within 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But once it got into the hands of again that leadership component, it just dissolved into this nightmare of no accountability, nobody wanting to take the reins from a leadership role, and figuring out how to talk through this, figuring out how to to mitigate it, to go through and listen to both sides of the story and figure out what was going on. They just kept punting and pushing it down the line and hoping it would go away. And after 40 days of being suspended for doing nothing, it eventually did go away. Right, the season was over.
Crazy.
They gave me their final declaration after I finally got to talk to them 40 days into the process.
Walk us through how the school board responded or didn't.
So initially, it was just a call from the principal. There was and never any formal documentation, which is actually in their
Wow.
policies, in their written policies, that
Yeah.
anybody who's accused of doing anything is supposed to get a formal letter with the accusation, what the accusation is, and what the process will be to resolve that. I never got that. I got a phone call from the principal telling me I was suspended indefinitely. And when I asked for, what did I do? Who's the accuser? Can I talk to? And it was like, I can't tell you, and no. you know, I was basically just cut off root and stem.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's just crazy. Was there ever a chance to explain your side or no?
No, not until very late into the process. So I had asked for that from the get go. I said, let's get in a room, let's talk about this because this is inaccurate. And anybody who knows me, which was evident by the support I was getting. You asked me about the lack of support, but the support I was getting from the basketball community that day, within an hour of me finding out, my phone was blowing up with texts, with phone calls
Mm.
from other coaches, athletic directors, referees, people that I used to coach, alumni from that same school, that I used to coach, and alumni whose sisters were still playing on team, being coached by me. There was all this outreach, which was touching and very humbling. And then the support by my family was definitely there every day. So that was something that bolstered me and helped me continue to work through this. But never was there that support or any indication of support from the principal, from the administration of the school. And the higher up it went to the superintendent, the less engagement and the less protocol seemed to be followed. So it wasn't until about 29 days into this process that the board
Wow.
finally said, okay, let's talk. And so I met with them, three of the board members and the board's attorney. I was there with my attorney. And for the first time, I got to see what they had indicated was the evidence. And it was nothing. It was a video clip that showed nothing. It was a still of a video clip that had been stopped at a certain point that made it look like I might have been accidentally touching a young lady's bottom during a game. But as I first saw that video, when I came home, I watched the whole video through. It was very evident if you continued through that when I swiped, I hit the back of her lower back, and you could see the shirt ruffle.
Yeah.
So, and the funniest thing was, to me, people who act inappropriately look for places to be inappropriate, right? This was in the gym full of people with a camera right behind me that I know is there. So why on earth would I ever act in any way, shape, or form knowing that there's a big eye in the sky right behind me? And that was the frustrating part, is that they had thousands of video clips, thousands of minutes of video over 4 years of my actions and the consistency in my actions, none of which supported what the argument was.
What was the reaction of the other parents
Of the other parents on the team,
on the team? Yeah.
yeah, they were amazing. First of all, one of the fathers, who was the father of the senior that I was supposedly, that I was accused of inappropriately touching, he sent an email to the entire parents on the entire team, lambasting them, challenging them, like, how dare they use his daughter as a weapon to get at a good man. Those were his words. He said, this is absolutely not the case. This did not happen. There was nothing inappropriate. And then he went on to praise myself and my coaching staff for how we helped his daughter, who was a shy, meek freshman at one point, right? And didn't play varsity initially. She played a little bit of time at both levels until she got her confidence and her skill sets to the point where they needed to be. And through hard work, she did. But she was that person, and then eventually blossomed into this incredible young lady as a senior captain, and then went on to, and currently is playing in college. So that's a great story of the progress. But every parent on that team supported me to the point where 2 weeks after my suspension, there was a school board meeting, and I didn't even know this was going on. I was home. My wife and daughter went to the meeting just to kind of hear and see what was going on. But the parents on their own had written a letter, and one of the mothers, the mother of that senior captain, stood up and read the letter to the entire board on behalf of 18 out of the 19 parents in the program and 3 additional alumni parents from previous years, asking for my immediate reinstatement, making statements to the fact that Coach was always mindful and respectful of the kids, built chemistry. The chemistry was evident on the floor and in the locker room, and how the girls felt about each other. And they wanted me and my staff immediately reinstated. And then the cherry on top of all that was another mother of a senior captain got up and read a letter on behalf of 18 out of the 19 girls of the current roster, stating similar concepts. And we want Coach back. And so you would think that would be enough. The board would have had all they needed to hear and see to act, and they didn't. It lingered.
Didn't move the needle.
Not at all.
Crazy. Yeah. What does this reveal about how institutions handle crises?
I think the first word that comes to my mind around an institution or administration that acts in such a way is cowardice. They are afraid to own something, to take hold of an event, a circumstance, and really dig into it and come out with a conclusion, a solution. Because then if you come out as an administrator and you make a conclusion or make a statement about something is this or that, now they personally are on the hook and are accountable for what happens next, right? And nobody or few people, I should say, in leadership levels of schools that I've seen, administrations I've been involved in, wants to take that extreme ownership, wants to be able to say, okay, this is the way we're moving forward, realizing that you're never going to please everybody, but also doing things a certain way because it's the right conclusion. It's the right way to do it. have some integrity in process and in thought and in execution. And they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know if some parents they try to talk to the main parents that accused you of what's going on here? What's the problem? Where they want to go with the story? Or no?
Then no, they never spoke to me. I've never spoken to them afterwards. I've not even seen them afterwards.
Mm.
When we don't have, it's not that big of a community.
Yeah.
um, but I heard things through the grapevine, which I always take with a grain of salt about who said what and this and that, because everybody has their own agenda in a way.
Hmm.
But no, I mean, and that's the bigger point, Sid. If you're going to be involved in a group event in basketball, for me, right, and you're going to put your son or daughter into a program that a coach is running, you have to be able to develop trust with that coach and
Absolutely.
build a relationship with that coach, and that's adults, right? And then that's the coach-parent relationship. Then you
Mm.
have to be able to give the coach and your son or daughter the bandwidth to build their own relationship, that player-coach relationship. And a lot of times today, parents just don't do that. There's kind of a hovering over the child, watching every moment, not letting them fall down or skin their knee or even experience failure of any kind, which is the sad part because in my book, failure is where some of the biggest lessons are.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in a lot of times in practice, I would push my kids, not physically, but push them and encourage them, push yourself to failure. And of
Yeah.
course, I'd get weird looks when the first time I said it, but you know what? If we're in the middle of a dribbling drill and I'm telling you to push as hard as you can to build that skill set, and you kick the ball halfway across the floor, just run, go get it, come back and start over
Hmm.
again. It's okay because you're learning where your boundaries are, but you're also learning what do I need to do to get past those boundaries? What do I need to
Yeah.
do to get better?
I mean, sport, maybe it's the only place where it doesn't matter how much you train, it doesn't matter how good you are. There is no guarantee whatsoever that you're gonna win that match, that you're gonna cross the finishing line first. There is no guarantee. And the beauty is there is no one match in a season. There is many matches, many games, many tournaments, and like you said, you learn from failure.
Uh-huh.
You try to figure out to understand why did you fail, and then you roll your sleeves, work hard, and back again on the court. That's what it is. And on that, talking about parenting, how has parenting in youth sports evolved over the years?
It used to be when I played, my parents, if they were available, would get me to the practice or the game that I could, that I was part of. And then that was it. They didn't interact. They didn't engage. If they were in the stands, they rooted and cheered for me as a player. And of course, they hope you win, but most importantly, they were hoping you were having fun and learning in the process
Yeah.
of all this. As time went on, parents got a little bit more uh, interactive. Like it was almost like a video game where they're in the stands holding the buttons, pushing where they want you to
I like
go,
it.
and so. And sometimes they would stand up and blurt things out, and try to direct a child from the stands in a team sport that they have a coach for. And what became the problem more and more so is that a lot of times what they were directing their child to do was contradictory to what the coach was imploring their child to do within the context of the team, within the framework of a team.
Mm.
So and a lot of basketball games, the moment you see a child hit the ball touch their hands, you'll hear a parent inevitably stand up, shoot it, shoot it. Well, that may not be the right moment. That might not be the right shot for them. They may not be shot ready. And there's all these things that parents are not in tune with because they're not at practice. They don't see the sequence of events by which a team is shaped and formed and developed. They don't understand the role of each player in that team culture. So so I saw more and more of that going on. And then of course the whole crux of our conversation is the brazenness by which parents will come now and engage coaches. There's still, and again, it's a minority, but it's a very vocal, very loud minority.
Mhm.
There's still a lot of great parents who come up and say, great game. They're encouraging and they leave it at that, even if they disagree with you. They're they're supportive of their child, and they're not overbearing. But there are those who will immediately come up to you right after a game. My son only played 2 minutes. Okay,
Yeah.
like, and they start challenging you right there in that moment, in
Yeah.
the heat of the moment, emotion of the moment, and expect you as a person to just react or not react at all. Just take it.
It's quite strange because what you're telling me, it's not only in the United States, it's everywhere. I see it here on a weekly base. I walk to a soccer pitch and you see parents standing cheering, which is fantastic, which is great. But in the same time, you have three, four parents really loud in, I don't know where it is. I don't know. Are they craving for attention? It looks like I see a shift from supporting their kids to sabotaging the moment and probably whatever come next, And I don't understand what fueled that. Is it lack of attention? Is it pressure within the community? Is it social media? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of A, B, C, and D. I do think, especially definitely in the last 10 to 15 years, social media has ramped up in terms of its influence, and I'll say mostly negative influence on the youth today, not just in sports, but, I was walking to the train station in New York City yesterday to get home, my commute, and there was a string of about 5 people who absolutely had their head down looking at their phone while they're walking in my direction. And I had to bob and weave to avoid them because they
Yeah.
weren't looking up to see where they were going. Right. So that kind of selfish, self-focused, immediate gratification that's at your fingertips all the time is definitely dragging kids into the mud a little bit. Certainly around, the ability to take images of themselves and put it out to the world and look at me and look at how great I am. And you'll see, there was one young lady, as a matter of fact, the young lady whose parents levied the accusation against me, she would put out video clips all the time on social media about her shooting and how good she was. And while it was true in a vacuum, right, you can take a 30-minute video and clip it down to 3 that look pretty good, right? And it's true in a vacuum. There was good shooting form, good shooting skills there. But in the moment that you start to put defenders on you or change, go into the pace of the game or change the environment in which you're working, that success wasn't there. And that's what we were trying to build to. But if you look at my YouTube or you look at my, whatever social media account I'm on, I'm awesome. So that ability to self-perpetuate how great you are has really changed the mentality of kids and their approach
Yeah.
to the game.
Yeah. Most of all, I think parents, they are chasing their kids' dream, but they're chasing their own dreams.
Yeah, there's definitely early, like very beginning of my coaching career, it was a lot of, I was a great basketball player and so was my kid, even though that doesn't necessarily run in the bloodlines, right? You don't automatically become a great whatever because your parents were. And so there was that, or the opposite side where maybe they weren't as good, but now their kid has a chance to be good. So they're living vicariously through that child. So that was a lot of the early stuff. As time evolved, it became a lot about trying to get their kid to earn a college scholarship.
Yeah.
And so that pressure to go out and be ready to earn a college scholarship and save money, even though you're pumping a lot of money into the training and et cetera to get there, to save money on the academic side, that pressure evolved in society and became greater. Even though the number of people that get a college scholarship is slim, and the number of people who then move on to be a pro is even slimmer. In basketball for men, it's 1.3% that actually that have the ability to go on to become a pro, and for women, it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
But
And on that, Darren, in sports, the statistics is less than 1%. It doesn't matter which sport, 1% that make it to the next level.
yeah, so I think those pressures, like there's always that, I want to be a pro. Everybody, listen, I grew up, I wanted to be Johnny Bench and Pete Rose combined. Those are my 2 favorite players. I didn't have the skill sets, I didn't have the God-given talent, and I didn't have the drive to spend the time to learn how to be a great hitter or a great catcher. So not all of us have that skill set and talent. That doesn't mean you don't go out and work or put yourself in a team situation and develop the skills that you can. And because it's those skills, that discipline, that commitment to developing those skills, that ability to function well in a team environment as a smaller piece of a larger puzzle, those are the skill sets that strip away the sports. Those are the skill sets that are going to take you further in life.
Yeah, yeah. You describe parents embracing early morning practices almost as a payback for their kids.
Yeah.
How have you seen that dynamic change over time?
Well, that was when I was coaching seventh and eighth grade boys at Holy Family, and in order to get gym time, I had to be creative. So I said, okay, 7 a.m. and yes, I would literally see people dropping their kids off and rolling away, in their car, pulling away in the car with a big smile or actually physically laughing. So how it's changed over the time is that the schools, grammar schools, high schools, they make it a little harder to get gym time. Like the freedom to do something at Saturday morning gets questioned. One person questions it, it ruins it. It takes it away for everybody. The school will automatically say, okay, we can't have practice that early.
Yeah.
And I think the other challenge is that the parents have their kids in so many different things, so many different activities that they're creating conflict with events, conflict of things that they're in. So now being at the high school practice, for example, isn't the priority all the time, which it should be. You're in season. That sport is in season. Academics first, right? You're given time when you get home to get your academics done and then come back and be committed to and focused on practice and development for your team, for your school team. Mm. But there's outside events that parents are dragging them to.
Yeah. Let's go back and talk about the school board. Where did the leadership break down in your case?
From the very beginning, the initial communication that was offered to me by the principal was flawed, and even to the point where again, there was nothing formal. It was just a phone call. So in spite of the written policy that there was this formal process to follow, it never was. In addition to my being found out, my notification that I was suspended for what I wasn't sure of at that point. I found out also, I asked, so I assumed my son, who was my assistant coach, would then take over the role of head coach, which would be the normal circumstance in every other situation. And I was told, no, he is suspended too. So then I asked of the principal, why did he do something wrong? And his answer was, quote, no, he has your last name, end quote. So now having my last name was somehow criminal, right? He was now being faulted for what were perceived to be my sins, and that just was wrong for me. That was a failure as well. And so we were straddled through that whole event. And then as it went on, Sid, and more through that whole 40-day process, there were things that when I finally got to sit with the board and talk to them about, I would challenge them around their own process that they didn't follow, and I would read them verbatim from their policy. And their lawyer would say to me, oh, no, that only applies to students. And I would say, no, sir, that is from, section 602, paragraph whatever, that applies to faculty and staff. So I'm actually reading their policies to them, none of which they followed. And if they had followed them, if they had followed their own policies, if leadership had owned this process, 10 days would have been the max before a decision had been made. And if I was guilty, fine. If there was a misconception, give me the opportunity to correct it. Or if there was something that I had done accidentally that could be perceived a certain way, give me the opportunity to correct it and adjust whatever it was I was doing, right? Mm-hmm. None of that was afforded to me. And instead it went on for 40 days, with the end result being they paid me my stipend. They paid my son his stipend. They allowed me the opportunity to reapply for the job the next year after completing some undescribed sensitivity training. Wow. That was their conclusion.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for a good friend of mine who's in the basketball world actually said, oh, they're going to allow you the opportunity to reapply. Tell them to stick it, blah, blah, blah.
Was this fear of backlash, lawsuits, or lack of backbone from the school?
All of it. And from the parents who levied the accusation to begin with. It was all of it. And it was all about cover your rear end. It was all about protecting themselves. The parents who encouraged their child to levy the accusation, protected themselves from any liable or defamation of character lawsuit because they used their child as the vehicle to levy the accusation, right? Can't sue a minor. Then they used two other kids as the weapon to get at me, again, which was refuted by those specific children's parents. And then the board strung this out. And at the end of the day, the only reason they paid us and the only reason they afforded us the opportunity to reapply is so that they didn't quote fire us, which protected them. Well, we didn't fire you. We paid you. So, and I went through this with a bulldog attorney who was actually suing the school at the time. And he said, first of all, the parents are protected because of the minor, right? Mm-hmm. Second of all, the boards are, I forget the term he used, but basically shielded. They do such a great job of shielding themselves from litigation.
Yeah.
And, it gets costly if you try to dig into it.
Yeah. Since we're talking about leadership, how do you define leadership and how should empathy and accountability be balanced?
Leadership has many definitions to it, but essentially, to me, it's being able to effectively communicate a mission, use that term mission, to a group of people to the point where they understand it and can effectively execute. So it's being able to lead that group in one common goal, regardless of background, regardless of ethnicity or race or, history of that particular person. Empathy and accountability play throughout that entire circumstance because as a leader, take it to the basketball court. I had 19, 20 different types of people, young ladies from 14 years old to almost 18 years old and all the personalities that comes with that, right? So I have to be able to understand that no matter what I'm putting out that day, each one of those young ladies is coming into that gym with something else that has gone on throughout the day that I'm totally unaware of. So I have to be able to, not that I need to know what was going on, but I have to be able to acknowledge or understand or recognize that there's something else impacting their desire to be there that day, their focus on being there that day, the intensity with which they come that day, and be empathetic to that, to the point where I don't get frustrated. Maybe I pull them aside and have an individual conversation and try to reel them back into, hey, you're here for 2 hours. Let's focus on basketball. Let's use this as your escape from whatever else is going on, right? So empathy is huge. And in the work world, it's the same thing. Everybody, I have a team of 9 that I lead now that are salespeople. And every single day we have interactions where my first instinct is, okay, where are they today in their person, and how do I meet them there as their leader to get the most out of them today, to help them realize their potential. And then accountability is the bottom line. We all, from sports through real life, are all accountable to different things, whether it's, certainly ourselves, our families, our family members, the team that we're coaching or that we're playing for, playing with, in life, and in terms of the employees. When we're an employee to a larger corporation, we're accountable for our actions and for what we're doing and for what we're bringing to the table and how we're interacting with others. And a lot of times that's lost. Nobody wants to own that. Nobody wants to be held to that account. Least of all, in my experience, school boards, administrations. They just want to get through. They want to punch the ticket on their tenure. They want to get through unscathed and survive. And really, in leadership, it's more about helping your team survive and thrive, not how you survive yourself.
Yeah. You've often referenced extreme ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin.
Yes.
How did that book, Darren, shape your thinking about leadership and accountability?
Well, first of all, it's an amazing book. So if you haven't read it, I highly, highly recommend it. They do a great job of...
I've read it maybe 10 times.
Yeah.
It's actually... That's for our listeners. Here is the book.
Yes.
This one. It's just for the listeners unfamiliar. Extreme Ownership. It's a best-selling leadership book by former Navy SEALs Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It teaches that leaders must take complete responsibility for everything in their world. No excuses, no blame shifting. And I think these principles have had a profound impact on leadership thinking beyond the military, including education and sports.
Yeah, and actually, we had during COVID, my company's phenomenal, by the way, Shaw Industries. But the leadership team there is really, really forward thinking and engaging. And during COVID, when the world went dark, and everybody's trying to figure out how do we survive out of this, they actually had Jocko Willing come on and give us a
Wow.
virtual engagement. And that's the first time I really got to know of him more intimately, like see him, talk to him. And that's when I read Extreme Ownership. And it had a profound impact on me personally and how I would start to craft my leadership more so. Like, I'd been in leadership roles and at the Naval Academy certainly had a lot of experience and education focused around leadership. But now taking his concepts and crafting them and seeing where they fit into what I can do, a lot like a basketball player, how do I hone my skills? How do I practice these things to get better at them? And recognizing the moments along the line where I failed in trying to execute a certain leadership skill set, but now how do I focus it? How do I hone it to get better at it? So that book was impactful. As a matter of fact, Sid, I was talking to one of my salespeople yesterday, having a conversation around. She's a young salesperson looking to emerge into more full-fledged sales activity. And we started to talk about strategy and development of what you're going to be doing day in and day out. And I referenced the chapter in there that Jocko writes about plan your dive your plan. And so, for SEALs, that means one thing. And what he does a great job of is explaining what that means as a SEAL, but how do you apply that to work?
Yeah.
Right? How does a CEO apply that concept to leading his team and leading his company? And I had a wonderful conversation with her around, it's great we're going to create a market plan for you, but you also have to understand that just like in a dive, currents are going to take you off track, or an obstacle underwater might move you left or right or up or down from where you ultimately need to be. The ultimate thing is in the Extreme Ownership is you have to have enough intimacy with your plan that you're able to get back to it in spite of the distractions. So yeah, he's been profound. I mean, I love a couple of his sayings. One is discipline equals freedom. I love that. And the other one I heard him actually on his podcast the other day talking about choose your hard. Like it's hard to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go work out. So you can not do that and then go get up at 9 o'clock and go grab the donut off the counter. But then it's hard to deal with the consequences of being overweight and what that does to your body. So choose your hard. What do you want to commit yourself to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Could school administrators and boards benefit from applying the principles of extreme ownership? If so, where would you start?
Yes is the short and easy answer. I would honestly put my book and Jocko's book on the counter of a superintendent, and you need to read both.
And I will add the Pyramid of Success from Coach John Wooden as well.
Yeah. Again, something that is a wonderful leadership tool that goes developed in sport, but it goes beyond sports, right? You can apply that to anything. I would challenge anybody who's in any position of leadership to read that book and the culture, the leadership culture to allow you to create. That all starts with one thing: somebody has to own the process. And so, if you're in a school, it's the principal. If you're in the school overall, the superintendent of schools in that town is the ultimate person, the person who has the extreme ownership, or should, right? And so if you're in a position where you have that extreme ownership, me as a regional vice president for my company, I own the responsibility for how my team behaves day to day, and do those behaviors drive the right results. And I don't think enough people take that. I don't think enough people run to that ownership. They run from it.
In your case, when something like this happened to a coach, to a team, to a company, how do you shield a team when one loud voice disrupts everything?
Well, they didn't. And to me, that was the biggest miss. When you basically, the lesson there that was allowed to be promulgated was that, if you whine loud enough, if you stomp your feet enough, you'll get your way. And there's enough of that in society today that, we don't need to continue to exacerbate that or share that message out. So that in this case, they allowed the squeaky wheel to get all the attention and be the disruptor to what was a great program on the rise. And so the girls around her, the JV girls that were teammates and the varsity girls that were in the program, had to deal with this problem and the absence of their coaches and the uncertainty of what was going to happen to their coaches, to the program, to themselves. All of that emotion and stress and strain was thrown on the girls to the point where I received multiple phone calls from mothers who were most concerned of girls on the team, that their daughters were huddled up in the training room crying, saying they didn't want to play basketball anymore. They wanted to quit, so on and so forth. And my son and I were both resolute in, you don't allow them to do that. And one of the mantras that we had adopted during the year was out of Jay Wright's book, Attitude, but it was called Stay Connected to the Vine. And it was based on a parable from the Bible where, Jesus was just simply pointing out that leaves on a vine are stronger when they're connected to that vine. But when they fall off, they wither and get weaker. So our mantra all season long was stay connected to the vine. So in that moment of stress and duress and what are the girls' uncertainty about what they do, the message was the same: stay connected to the vine. And that vine was them, right? Wasn't me, wasn't the coaching staff, it was them.
Yeah.
Work for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Darren, in your early years at the Holy Family, you inherited a team not used to discipline or accountability.
Yeah.
What was your first moment of that culture shock, and how did you shift it?
Well, it was very early. I love the fact you bring this up because that was a great time, a lot of fun with those young men. But very early, like the first practice, when I would blow the whistle and say, "All right, center court," and some boys would almost continue talking without paying attention to the whistle. Some boys would run to center court. Some boys would walk, meander their way in. So that first time I said, I blew the whistle again. All right, everybody to the baseline. And then we ran a sprint, and then I blew the whistle again. All right, everybody center court. They all went to center court. So it starts with the simple things, setting the expectation of what your actions will be and are required to be in order to be successful, and then being consistent around that. So after a couple of days of going through that process, the next day I walk in, my assistant coach and I would kind of go over the game plan and talk about what we're going to do in practice. And then I blew the whistle. Everybody was at center court. I didn't even have to say center court, so it's providing the building blocks for them to create that discipline, and the structure and a commitment to each other, but also allowing them to understand that there are requirements, that there are things that they have to do to get better. And the big part of it is committing themselves to doing that.
How have NIL deals and scholarship dreams shaped parental expectations?
Oh, that's a sore subject right now, and I know a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, and just for our listeners outside the US, NIL stands for Name, Image, and Likeness. It allows high school and college athletes to earn money through sponsorship endorsements and personal branding without losing eligibility, which we don't have here in Europe.
Well, good for you. No, it has created a bit of a mess. I mean, college sports in the U.S. It's always been a business. Let's be honest about that, right? Especially for the bigger schools, the ones that have the great successes in football and basketball, and are bringing in a lot of money to the universities. That there's a business aspect to that, and of course. In our country of free enterprise and capitalism, everybody wants their piece of that pie. So it's no longer good enough for a young man or young woman to have earned a scholarship, athletic scholarship, that gives them free tuition to go to a school. And a lot of these, Division I high level schools and get a great education while you're playing a sport. That's no longer good enough. Yeah. Now, because I'm on the team and I wear your jersey, and you use me in a picture or something like that, I should be able to make money off of that. I should be able to make money if I can get an endorsement. And so, and I'm not begrudging anybody doing that, but what it has done in a large context is made the school and the sport secondary and tertiary to what the student is there for. They're there now to find a vehicle by which to get their name, image, and likeness out there so that they can earn money. And if they can't, what it's created in football and basketball in particular in the U.S. for college is that if they can't get it where they are, they jump in the transfer portal and then they go to another school. So that whole concept of loyalty, number one, is down the toilet.
Yeah.
Because everybody is loyal to themselves and themselves only. And then loyalty to the program and commitment to the school that offered you that scholarship to begin with has gone. It's blown away. So now you have this revolving door of players just going after the money, chasing the money, and the school and the program, the athletic program that they were involved in mean less. So it perpetuates that selfishness that is creating the problem, creating the bigger problem.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder what's the role of parenting, of the parents towards their kids, and treating youth sports from a parent standpoint, looking for the ROI, for the high ROI, and then the long-term cost for their kids when sports become a transaction. Maybe this is one of the main reasons why only or less than 1% from college sport, youth sports, and even here in Europe make it to high level.
Yeah, and I do think that's a big problem in what has become or has fueled some of the tension that we talked about earlier, where parents are more antsy about what's going on in a school sport, in a high school sport, or on the AAU court, is that the way athletics are shaped today, it used to be you played a sport in a season, then you moved on to the next sport in the next season, and kids had the opportunity to diversify their skill sets, to find to develop different muscles, to learn different things, to develop different mental capacity around athletics as a whole. Now it's so specialized, and parents are putting in thousands of dollars into the individual training of their child. Sometimes even though the child has already shown that they're not, and this is not a negative thing, they've kind of capped out. They've reached their maximum in this sport, but they'll keep pushing and keep putting them into training, multiple training, spending all that money. And then, as you mentioned, when they don't see the ROI on that, when their investment doesn't seem to be cashing out, they get frustrated. How come I'm putting all this money into my son or daughter to train them individually, and then when they're playing on your team on the high school court, they're not getting the minutes that correlate to the expense of that training? And what they're missing in that equation is they may not be practicing intensely. They may be so focused on their own individual skills that they're missing the larger team opportunity. And anytime they get on the court, the team functions less effectively than the 5 girls that are on there who maybe haven't been putting thousands of dollars into training and are more connected and are trying to figure out, how do we get this thing done?
Yeah. What does the job of a coach look like today?
Unfortunately, I think it's evolved into a glorified babysitting role, in a lot of ways. What it should look like, and what I always try to do is, again, going back to the extreme ownership, to the accountability piece, I wasn't there just to fill 2 hours of these kids' time. My goal was to help each and every one of them, regardless of their background, regardless of their skill set, just the fact that they wanted to commit this time to being part of this program. My goal was to help them understand the game, help them understand their own capabilities, help them recognize their potential, and meshing those things together so that if I can elevate my potential and elevate my knowledge of the game, I'm going to increase my effectiveness in my position in the team. And so that's what I was always about, development. And at the end of the day, and I still use this today in the work world, don't focus on the results. Focus on the behaviors that drive the results.
Yeah.
And so we would focus a lot in practice in the elements of the running our offenses, or the elements of 5 bodies moving as one on the defensive side that make it hard to find the holes, to penetrate a press or a hard-nosed half-court defense. And I will still apply those today, but that's my role. And above all of that is always the safeguarding of those young people that you're responsible for.
Yeah. And on that, trust is vital between a coach and every single team member. How do you build trust under constant parental scrutiny?
Part of it is that the concept, like I just shared, around staying connected to divine. Some people will say, what happens on the court stays on the court, or our locker room. You'll hear a lot of different mantras. So building that shell around, hey, we're a team, and while we're together, this is what we're focused on. And there's always going to be outside noise. There's always going to be, your parents on the car ride home telling you, after a game, telling you, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have done this. Listen to it, be respectful, but at the end of the day, we're responsible to each other for what's going on, within the confines of our team and our game. So the trust is really defined around helping the kids see and understand your commitment as a coach to them and to their development, the communication, the mechanism by which and how you communicate to them effectively. If you're going to be a constant screamer, getting in kids' faces, things like that, you're probably going to lose them pretty quickly. But if you can communicate effectively what you're trying to accomplish for them and for their team, and then help them take the steps to get there, then when you have those moments of intensity, or maybe you raise your volume, they understand, because they're more understanding because they understand the mission and what you've communicated to them already. Consistency in action and in the way you treat people. I can't go to my best player and treat them a certain way, and then go to my least skilled player and treat them differently. They need to see that consistency in approach to person and the acknowledgement of person on a team. So those are three key areas. I mean, there's a lot that goes into trust, but it is all earned for sure.
It made me thinking, because we were talking earlier about leadership, and it must be challenging for a coach to lead a team where they lose authority with, let's say, school board or some of the parents, And I remember in my time when I was involved, heavily involved in a youth sailing development program, we had this kind of documents that the parents, they have to sign. We draw a line. We draw a line in terms of parents' involvement, because while you are on a boat sailing, it's an individual sport, but it's a team. We treat everyone equally, and we don't push the youngsters in terms of heavy competition, because we're dealing with so many elements when it comes to sailing. You are on land preparing the boats, the logistic, then you go on the water. We spend more time on land than on water, depending on the weather. But we try every time to help the youngsters discover their inner qualities, which is sometimes it's hard to do, and the only way to do it is to shield them, like you were talking earlier. And one of them is the parents, actually, because when the kids, they go back home, or they are at supper around the dinner table, which is normal, you exchange your experience, what happened, and things like that. And we let the parents to even talking to their kids there is a limit, and sometimes for coaches to lead their team when they don't have that authority, or they lose that authority, is quite challenging.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And you mentioned a couple of things, like that player contract. I used to have some of those as well. And I would share that with the parents around, what I'm expecting from them, their commitment to practice times and, behaviors in the gym and during games, and down to riding the bus. We lived in a small enough community that people could take their kid from the school that we played at and go home. But I wanted them to have that bus ride back to the school, which was maybe 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes or whatever from what they would have done. But it was the important part was that they were together, win or lose, in that bus on the way home, and either celebrating together or commiserating around a loss, but learning from all that, being together throughout that entire process. So player contracts, communication to parents prior to the season, setting expectations, what they could expect from me, did a lot of that. The dinner room or the dinner table conversations, it is evident when you have a player on your team who is being told something differently at home than what they're hearing from you. And if that trust isn't created, if that bond isn't formed, then what they don't know how to decipher or to filter the different things they're hearing.
Mhm.
And inevitably, because they're young people, if mom and dad are telling them that their coach is horrible, they shouldn't listen to the coach, they know that
Or he
every,
favor XYZ within the team and not their
yeah,
kids,
yeah,
which is quite obvious topic.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or, say things like you should be getting more playing time
yeah.
or you should be shooting more or whatever.
Or
Those
coach
things,
doesn't like you for whatever reason.
yeah. So those things sink into a child. And especially, I find youth today to be less resilient in adversity than when we were growing up, so to speak. And that's probably a typical generational thing, but just in my experience and having seen it quite a bit over my time as a coach, that their strength and confidence in self, and I found this especially more with the young ladies that I coach than the young men, but their confidence in self is easily altered by something they hear or are told. So if you have mom and dad telling you at that dinner table that your coach, all the things we just talked about, it's hard for that not to follow them into the gym and start to chip away at that player coach engagement, which is so vital, right? They start to say, oh, maybe mom's right. Because if I go to put a group of 5 out on the floor as offense, and I call out 5 kids, and they're not one of those 5. Well, mom is right. But maybe as a coach, I put you on the defensive side because I know that you're a really good defender, and I want you to challenge that offense for me, right? But because they weren't one of the first 5 called, and mom and dad were telling them the coach favors somebody, that's where those things start to erode at the trust and the confidence and the team structure.
What would you say to a coach demoralized by false accusations?
Well, first of all, I'd love everybody to read my book so that it maybe
Mhm.
helps stop some of that. But if you're a coach and you are truly passionate about and convicted to and have the time to be convicted to the sport and to the development of the individuals in that sport, stick with it. Be true to yourself, have that integrity, and there's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be negative Nancy's out there that will chip away or find something to complain about. But if you're true to self and you have that integrity and confidence in what you're doing, just keep doing it. Keep being passionate about it. Keep sharing that passion with your kids. Keep driven. But at the same time, protect yourself. Because
Yeah,
what's the old saying? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
yeah, yeah.
But it's hard to identify who those enemies are, and when you're, I like to be a trusting and open person, and when you are that way, you open yourself to those wolves in sheep clothing, I guess.
We have that expression in French, which is God, let me deal with my enemies, but protect me from my friends.
Yeah, and in a
Yeah.
competitive environment, that friendship can wane, right? And I mean, there's a one story in the book that I shared that a gentleman that I was very friendly with and had coached with at one point, so we knew each other pretty well. And in the process of me now coaching his daughter, all of a sudden that dynamic changed. Oh, wait a minute, we're the same 2 people. What's the element that's causing this to be a problem, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. What advice to parents who wants to advocate without crossing the line?
be a supporter. I think that word is quietly powerful, right? Support your child, and support doesn't mean, the rose-colored glasses, the showering them with praise. That's support certainly, but that's not all that support is. Support is also understanding that when they get in the car after the game and they've had a bad game or there was a bad outcome, give them a minute to process. I called it the 24-hour rule, but
Mm.
give the kids a moment to process. They're dealing with their own emotions, and so your support might be silence at that point, right? But then when the opportunity arises, when time has passed a little bit, your support may be just listening. What was it that you felt didn't work well for you in the game? And when they start to share things, instead of trying to correct it, just let them emote, let them talk
Yeah,
about it,
yeah,
and then offer that or continue with the word support, the support of, hey, go talk to your coach. If you feel like you don't understand this play, go talk to your coach. Ask them for help. And if they would promote and support that kind of that coach player relationship and that open communication in that relationship, a lot of these circumstances and problems would take care of themselves. And that would be the greatest thing. Just you be a fan, yes, but be a supporter most of all.
Yeah. Darren, if your book changes one thing in youth sports, what do you hope it is?
I hope it allows people to refocus their efforts and energy back to the game and to the fun that comes through game and comes through sport, the positive traits of competition that you can learn, in those moments, the whole concept of earning your way through like a merit-based process. Sport is merit-based. If you can hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball 350 feet, you're probably going to be promoted to different levels of baseball, right? If you know how to tack and when to use the jib and all that kind of stuff, you're probably going to be a better sailor
Mm.
and win certain races that others won't.
Yeah.
If I can shoot with consistency and have a good rounded offensive effort in my game, I'm probably going to do better in the game than those that don't. So allow people to and encourage the fun and the enthusiasm behind the sport and recognize the wonderful learning opportunities that come out of sport, but transcend sports and allow you to be a better person, allow you to be a better teammate in the work world, allow you to be a better employee, um, and just give you the opportunity to thrive in life.
Mm. Mm. Let's shift gear and talk about the writing process of Out of Bound.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part of writing this book?
um, Most of it was relatively easy and fun. Just kind of going backwards through, as I was going backwards, trying to apply the concept of where parents cross that line between the player coach relationship. It was also allowing me to have fun memories or rekindle those memories of all the great things that happened along the lines and the great relationships that were developed, both with player and parent, and of course my assistant coaches as well. So that was all the fun part. The difficult part, because of all the fun I was having doing it, was staying on target. Playing your dive your plan, right? So there were times where I would be getting wrapped up in like the 24-0 season or something like that, and just all the thrill that came with it. And then I realized, oh, I'm supposed to be writing about the conflicts and how to recognize those and maybe how to manage those. So that became a little difficult at times, so just staying on task. Otherwise, the book probably would have been about 3,000 pages.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of great things to write about. But that was difficult or challenging, and I was able to work through it, I think, because I also wanted to provide some of the balance of, hey, this isn't all bad, and there's a lot of good things that happen around it that are wonderful moments. And then ultimately, when I got into the last season, the one where the suspension took place and the challenges around that, I mean, it took me a good 2 years to emotionally and spiritually kind of get beyond that. So having to rekindle that, all the experiences, and the father who had written the email, whose daughter was one of the quote unquote accusers that really wasn't. He texted me after reading the book, and he said, "This pisses me off all over again." So in some way, I was glad that my writing evoked that emotion. But then I texted him back and I said, "Yeah, imagine how I felt." So yeah, that was a difficult time as well, just trying to get back through all the emotions that came with that experience and the disappointment of that experience.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like revisiting those early Holy Family years?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. My son and I have a podcast called Outside the Coach's Box that we do together, just father, son, harassing each other through the world of sport, having fun with each other. And he created it. But one of the things he did early on in that podcast was he had pulled, without me knowing, had pulled a bunch of the young men who were now in their late 30s, early 40s, that were on two of my undefeated teams from Holy Family.
Yeah.
Pulled them together in a gym, and we held a podcast there with them. So it was amazing to go through and listen, listen to each or all of them talk about the positive impacts in their adulthood, in their development as young men, you
Mhm.
know, that myself and my assistant coach had on them over that time frame. So it was amazing to go back through the book and write about those experiences. Excuse me, and good and bad, championship years and struggling years, and just remember all the emotions and the impact and the bonds that were formed that are still true today. And that was evident in that podcast. Just again, having 40-year-old men come up to hug you and hey, coach, and just a great experience.
Yeah, yeah. There is a powerful idea in the book, Darren. It's not the game that broke me, it's the silence around it. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, no, listen, if it hadn't been for the circumstance at Homedale High School that led to my being suspended, and all the falsities and failures and lack of action by people who are supposed to lead, if that hadn't happened, I would still be coaching today in some way, shape, or form. Coaching basketball specifically, I do still coach. I coach my team at work. There's still a lot of those
How's
leadership
it
things.
going?
That's going great. None of them know how to play basketball, but
Okay.
but no, work wise, it's going great and it's fun. And a lot of the principles in sport apply to work, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And vice versa. But I would still be, had it not been for the letdown of people who were supposed to be in charge and be able to handle and recognize lies and things like that when they occur, and manage it and come out on the other end with a positive, correct solution. When that failure, that letdown occurred, it caused me to kind of pull back because I do not work in the school. I work outside of the school. There's a whole world out there that I can't afford to have jeopardized because of the want of one young lady. I can't have my ability to make a living be impacted because somebody wants more playing time and doesn't want to go through the route to earn it. And so that really kind of created a shell around my still unyielding passion to work with others, to help them learn how to work and function as a team and to get out of themselves the best of themselves.
Mhm. And on that, it's time for our lightning round.
All right.
So, first team you ever coach?
I coached the Naval Academy Prep School. I was assistant coach there. Young men who were 18 to 22 who had a desire to go to the Naval Academy but needed some development. So that was my first experience coaching and where I caught the bug.
Excellent. So you cut the bug there and there is no antidote.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Most memorable moment on the sidelines.
Well, I think there's a lot of them over 33 years, but the one that really sticks out in my head was I was an assistant coach at St. John Vianney High School, and we were playing St. Rose, which was
Hmm.
my arch rival in my previous head coach role. So as a head coach, I was 0-29 against St. Rose. I was never able to beat them. The closest I got was a 1-point loss in overtime as a coach, and a coach of that particular team. So fast forward to when we were playing with St. John Vianney, and there was a close game, and the last second play that unfolded by the least expected person on our team hitting a 3-point shot for us to win. And I immediately hands up, yeah, like, as if I had played and won the game. But it was yes, that was a very fun time for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Pre-game ritual.
Pre-game ritual, I would typically go in about an hour before the game
Hmm.
while the JV was playing and the varsity was watching the JV. I'd go in and on the whiteboard, I would write up keys to our game. I would write up what we're doing offensively, what we're doing defensively, and at the very bottom of that board would be a quote, a motivational quote of some kind,
Nice.
to kind of sum it all together. And while I was doing that, I would have my earphones on, listening to my pregame mix. Yeah, so that was my ritual.
Nice, nice. Go to comfort food.
Oh boy, the fat guy in me likes Taco Bell. I could eat Mexican food all day. So,
Yeah.
but and not that that's true Mexican, but very quick, very tasty.
Spicy?
Well, I like it spicy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Favorite sports movie?
Grew up on Rocky, and I would
Mhm.
have to say that's still one that is near and dear to my heart. A close second would probably be, and as I said that, it just left my mind. But Denzel Washington football. Remember the Titans. That's what it was.
Yeah, I remember the Titans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite athletes all time?
Oh boy. As a kid, Magic Johnson was my guy. I
Not
wouldn't have
Larry?
that much. No. Well, I'm a California boy to start with, number one. So,
Yeah.
and I grew up a Laker fan because of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But when Magic
Yeah.
came on, that whole Showtime, and then I'll have to say though, in all honesty, my fandom shifted to David Robinson when he came out of the Naval Academy for obvious reasons. You know, we were actually in the same company together at one point. He was a year ahead of me, but when he got to the Spurs, the Admiral was my favorite player.
The player who surprised you the most?
One of my players?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stories around that too. I had a young lady who, and I write about her in the book, 1,000 Ways to 1,000 Points. But she came into me one of the practices before her senior year and said to me, "Coach, I'm going to get my 1,000 points," which is a high level achievement in high school basketball. And I paused for a minute, and in my head, I'm like, she's not even close. But verbally, I said, "Okay, well, let's see where we are, and you know, we're going to work through the team to get it." You know, yes, coach, I would do nothing different, right? So I go back and look, and she's about 545 points away from 1,000.
Oh,
And this is her senior year. 545 points. I'm like, okay, this will be interesting. But I didn't want to squash her dream or her ambition. And again, reiterated to her that everything has to come through the team. We're not going to create separate plays for you. And she said, wouldn't have it any other way. And what was beautiful about it is it became the rallying point for the team. Everybody wanted her to get it. Everybody understood what apparent unsurmountable challenge of going to get this 1,000 point was. And they just gelled. And they weren't my most talented team basketball wise, but they were my best team chemistry wise. And she ended up 42 points away from 1,000. And we had 3 games that were snowed out. So just her and the experience of the team through her that season was magical.
Yeah. And lastly, Darren, a piece of advice or wisdom to our listeners on any topic.
I think it goes back to a concept that we were talking about earlier, and it revolves around compassion for others, right? And again, I think it's Jocko Willink. I saw a T-shirt that he had out yesterday that said, the front says "Be kind," which is a big part of compassion.
Wow.
And the back says something along the lines of, everybody you meet through your day has something else that is impacting them that you are completely unaware of. So that whole concept of I guess not judging somebody by their, you know, whatever they're going on, but trying to understand, having empathy, which you had mentioned earlier, toward other people, kindness toward other people, to realize and put yourself aside for a second, realizing that they may be having something going on that you're unaware of that could be driving a certain behavior, a certain attitude, or a certain, them pulling back from engaging like they normally would, and trying to understand what that would be. So compassion and kindness, for sure.
Fantastic. Darren Ault, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Sid, I love the conversation. I'm grateful for the fact that we had the opportunity to do this. Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, I leave you with a few words from the one and only Coach John Wooden. Be more concerned with your character than your reputation. Your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think you are. Thank you for tuning in to the Prisoner Sports Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and go to Amazon and order your book Out of Bounds by Darren Ault. Until next time, stay curious, inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.